The Montreal Canadiens are going into year 3 of their rebuild, and a quarter of the way into the new season, they are tied for last in the NHL. So the question is why and what's next? To discuss that, here's Marty Biron. Marty, what's the problem with the Habs? The biggest problem right now, the personnel, the people bringing the personnel in, or the person running the bench?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, Gino, right now. But I'm going to look at the top. And look, I think Jeff Gordon, Kent Hughes are trying to do some good things. But they may have over-evaluated a few people on that roster. They've got some nice parts for the future, but I don't think it's for now. So I'm going to start at the top and say, look, it starts there. But there's definitely a domino effect. And that first domino went down. The rest of the dominoes are all down, and now you got to clean it up.
All right, let's break it down now. Let's start with the head coach. Marty St. Louis was hired in February 2022. Zero head coaching experience other than kids hockey. But they brought him in because they knew they were going into a rebuild. They wanted a guy that could make the transition a little easier on the kids as they did that. Has this now run its course? Is it time for them to bring in someone who can take this group to the next level with more significant NHL experience?
I think Marty's done some really nice things in Montreal, but I think it is time now to think, okay, where are we and should we move on? A lot of teams do that. They have a coach coming in to kind of set the direction and help maybe individually develop some players. That's what Marty's done. Cole Caulfield is a smaller player that plays the game a little bit like Marty St. Louis would play the game. So it has helped Cole Caulfield becoming the player that he is. You look on the defense, they have a lot of offensive weapons on the defense side of things. Lane Hudson is looking good. Marty's helping that. Caden Gooley's look good. Marty's helping that. Even a guy like Mike Madison, I think he's had some of his best years in his career because of coach like Marty St. Louis has helped developing individuals that are going to be really, really good in the National Hockey League, but collectively, systems-wise, and everything. Look, the Canadiens are 30th in the NHL in expected goals against at 5-on-5 per game. Their man-on-man coverage is not working. It's not really working around the NHL this year at all. You look at the New York Rangers, they're only the Rangers because Shesterkin and Quick have been able to bail them out, but they give up a ton of scoring chances. Look at the Colorado Avalanche, right? Playing that, hey, we're going to have our man. We're going to be very good in the defensive zone. That way, it's not worked for Colorado because the goaltending is not being able to bail them out. In Montreal, it has not worked because they give up way too many chances. So I think this is a situation where Marty has to recognize that, the coaching staff have to recognize that, and they have to change it. And right now, they're not making that change, and it falls on the shoulder of the coach. That's for sure.
But Marty might be saying, hey, I'm telling the kids what to do. They're just not doing it. What about the responsibility for the players? Juraj Slafkovsky, 1 goal in 17 games. Kirby Dach, 1 goal in 20 games. St. Louis just moved the two of them down to the fourth line. He says, I don't think it's a message. It's just get to work. Are these guys just simply underachieving and underperforming, Marty?
Well, I think there is some players, and Kirby Dach is probably underachieving, underperforming. What has Kirby Dach done in the past to say, hey, he's going to be a 70-point player? He's going to be a second-line center that is going to be able to drive a line. Like Kirby Dach is a complementary player. He's not a driver. And unfortunately, now you realize that if you don't play with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, you're not going to perform. The one guy that's overperforming is Brendan Gallagher. And without Gallagher, where would Montreal be? They wouldn't be tied for last. They'd be dead last. Like, there wouldn't be anybody close to them. But I look at Juraj Slafkovsky. In the first 6 games of the year, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points. He was playing with Caulfield and Suzuki. He gets hurt. And all of a sudden, things get mixed up. The lines get moved around. When he comes back, he plays 1 game with Suzuki and Caulfield and hasn't played with those two since. Well, you know what? He's got only 5 assists in this time since he's been back in 11 games. So that's not going to be good enough. But you have to try to help Slafkovsky. How do you make him play better? You play him with Suzuki and Caulfield. So I believe that those are the 3 that should play together, and it would help maybe Slafkovsky get more confidence. But the rest of the lineup is definitely not up to par. You're not going to win with Josh Anderson and Christian Dvorak and Newhook and those guys. Look, they're good pieces on a winning team, but if you put them in the top 6 or top 9 even, it's not going to work. So there is responsibility on the players, but I don't think that roster is good enough to expect big things other than if you put the big 3 together.
Okay, but help me with this. At first glance, it looks like the Habs have all the young talent they need. The management has done a great job of
Yep.
building the youth. When Craig Button did his core 424, he ranked the Habs as having the best young talent in the entire NHL. Is this young core just underachieving overall, or do you need to bring in some veteran leadership up top to help them take the next step?
I think some veteran leadership up top would be good. And number one, I think veteran leadership may go to the coaching staff and say, hey, listen, this man-to-man thing is not working. Right now, the young kids are trying to do what their head coach and their coaching staff is telling them to do. And they do video and they say, look, it's simple. All you have to do is this. But in the NHL, it goes really fast. And if you don't have the experience to be able to adjust and maybe make some kind of changes, you're not going to be able to change on the fly like that. So I do think that their youth is hurting them right now because they're trying to play a mature game. They're trying to play an experienced game, and it's not going to work. But you're right. Look, they have some really nice young pieces. Slafkovsky, Caulfield, you have Caden Gooley, you have Lane Hudson, you have Demidov, who's not even been here. I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to be a really talented team. But right now, everything that's good on the ice or good as a prospect or for the future is losing a lot of that experience because it's just not working. And they're going to have to do it again in a year or in 2 years from now. You're going to miss out on the great years of development that those players could have. Look, I'm in Buffalo. I covered the Sabres. The Sabres missed out on Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Ryan O'Reilly, the first couple of years of Rasmus Dahlin. Why? Because they just didn't have the right direction. Now it seems like the Sabres, with experience, Lindy Ruff, other pieces, have the right direction, but they missed out on some really good players, probably best group of prospect 5-6 years ago under 24, right? The Canadiens may be in that
Yeah.
same position right now if they don't make some changes.
Okay, so you've, to your credit, given a ton of what the concerns are, and you suggested a lot of things of what could be done to fix those concerns. The question is this, Marty. This is what Habs fans want to know. If the Habs do indeed make the right moves from top to bottom, how much longer before this team becomes seriously competitive for a playoff spot?
Well, it's the NHL. It can flip from year to year, but I do think that this is going to take another couple of years. Look, they would look on their way last season, right? And I thought the Montreal Canadiens this year could be an NHL 500 type of team, 82 points. You're not knocking on the door of the playoffs, but you're taking a step forward. It doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So now you're probably 2 years away. And I think that Jeff Gordon can't use have to
Two
look at it and
years,
say, okay,
Marty.
now we have to be a little bit too. Yeah, I know, 2 years, but unfortunately, it's taking steps back right now. That's the problem. And that's why I think the top, when I told you at the start of the segment that the top is probably where things need to happen, is not so much saying we got to change GM and we got to change president of hockey operation. No, is that they have to go in and look at what's on the ice right now and say, hey, Marty, coaching staff, this is not working. I understand you're trying to make it so that we're going to be a fast team. We're going to be good offensively. Well, not only is it not working because we don't have enough offense, it's hurting our defensive side. So you have to come in and demand changes, not come in and recommend changes, not come in and say, hey, could we try something different? You have to come in and say, this is not going to continue that way. That's why I'm putting a lot of this on Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, because they have the authority. They're the top of the food chain. They have the authority. And if they come in with authority, then it changes the systems and everything at the coaching level. And then it helps the players achieve their potential at the players level. So that's why I'm going to the top and say they have to demand changes. They don't have to fire anybody. They just have to change the course and demand that the things are going to change.
Do you think, this is the final question, it could be a brief one. Do you think Martin St. Louis could institute the change that that you're suggesting Habs management needs from him, or do the Habs need to change Martin St. Louis to somebody else?
I think that he can, and he's proven that one-on-one, and he's had some really good moments developing players. Now it's coming about putting a team together, and that's still a big question mark. So I think Marty St. Louis can if given the right direction. But I also think that the Montreal Canadiens have to keep their eyes open. They have to look around and see, how can we make this better? Jim Montgomery was just available, right? And the St. Louis Blues said, you know what? Sorry, Drew Bannister, we like you. You took over less than a year, but we're going to move in a different direction because we see somebody that is better, that we cannot pass on, right? Well, Montreal decided not to do that, or maybe they wanted to, but it didn't happen. So they have to keep their eyes open, because if I'm telling you 2 years for a rebuild, but if you miss out, and if it continues that way, you're going to miss out on Suzuki, Caulfield, Caden Gooley, Hudson. You're going to miss out on everybody. Now it's going to be 5, 6, 7 years. That's somewhere you don't want to be.
The Habs rebuild was the talking point with a very fired up TSN analyst, Marty Biron.